It was a cold and quiet night at Arlington National Cemetery. The moonlight fell softly over the white marble stones and the air felt unusually still. Sergeant Michael Reeves, a young tomb guard, walked slowly across the plaza, his boots striking the ground in perfect rhythm. Every movement he made was precise, steady, and full of respect. This was not just a job for him, it was an honor. He had dreamed of this post since he was a boy, and now, as one of the few chosen to guard the tomb of the unknown soldier, he carried that duty with pride. But that night felt different. The silence was heavier than usual, and a faint mist began to form near the tomb. Reeves tried to ignore it. He had seen fog before and knew that the nights at Arlington could be strange. Yet something about the air made him uneasy. The temperature dropped suddenly and he felt a cold breeze brush against his neck. He stopped, glanced around, and saw nothing but the dim light reflecting off the marble. Still, his heart started to beat a little faster. He took a deep breath and continued his walk, counting his steps as always. The sound of his boots echoed through the still night. But then something moved. Just out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of a faint light near the edge of the tomb. It wasn't from a lamp. It looked almost like the shimmer of a person standing there. Reeves turned slowly. For a moment he thought his mind was playing tricks on him. But then the shape became clearer. It was the figure of a soldier. The man stood straight, wearing what looked like an old uniform, the kind used in World War II. His face was calm, his expression serious, and his hand slowly rose to a salute. Reeves froze where he stood, unsure whether to respond. His training told him to remain still, but his heart told him to return the salute. After a few seconds, Reeves raised his hand and saluted back. The moment his fingers touched his cap, the figure began to fade. It didn't walk away. It simply disappeared into the mist as if the night had swallowed it whole. Reeves stood there for a long time, unable to move. He had never believed in ghosts or anything supernatural. He was a man of discipline and order, but what he saw was not his imagination. He could still feel the air shift, could still see that faint glow in his memory. Finally, he continued his post, trying to focus, but his mind was spinning. Every sound, every whisper of wind seemed louder than before. When his duty ended, he went to the small guardhouse to write in the duty log, as every tomb guard must. As he turned the pages, he paused at an old, faded entry from many years before. His eyes stopped on a name, Lieutenant Samuel Hayes. For some reason, the name felt familiar. He tried to recall if he had heard it during training or from another guard, but nothing came to mind. Still, the name stayed with him. Something about it wouldn't let go. That night, after his shift, Reeves returned to his quarters, but sleep would not come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that soldier again. The same calm face, the same salute, the same fading mist. The next morning, curiosity got the better of him. He went to the small library inside the military base and looked through the old records of soldiers honored at the tomb. There were thousands of names, but he searched for one, Samuel Hayes. It took time, but when he found it, his heart nearly stopped. Lieutenant Samuel Hayes had served in World War II. His file said he was reported missing in action in 1944 during a mission in France. His body was never recovered, and his family had been left without closure. Reeves stared at the page, unable to look away. Could the figure he saw have been this man? Was it just a coincidence that the name appeared the same night he saw the spirit? He tried to reason with himself. Maybe his mind was tired from the long night shift. Maybe the fog and the lights had created an illusion. But deep inside, he knew what he had seen. The soldier had saluted him. It was real as the marble under his boots. That evening, Reeves returned to duty again. This time, he felt both fear and curiosity. He kept glancing toward the same spot, half expecting to see the figure again. Hours passed and nothing happened, but as the clock struck midnight, the same cold wind returned. Reeves turned slowly. The mist rose again, curling like smoke around the tomb. His breath caught in his throat. For a moment, he thought he saw the faint outline of the soldier once more, not as clear as before, but still there, standing silently. Reeves didn't move. He simply whispered, "Who are you?" But there was no answer. Only the wind moved. Then, as before, the figure faded away. After his shift, Reeves spoke to one of the older guards who had served there for many years. The man listened quietly, his face thoughtful. When Reeves finished, the older guard nodded and said softly, "You're not the first to see something here, son. Sometimes the past doesn't rest easy. He patted Reeves on the shoulder and walked away, leaving him with more questions than answers. That night, Reeves sat by his window, staring at the cemetery lights in the distance. He couldn't stop thinking about Lieutenant Hayes. Who was he? Why did he appear now? Was he trying to tell him something? The thought filled Reeves with both fear and purpose. He didn't know what lay ahead, but deep down he felt that this was not a random event. Something, or someone, wanted to be found. From that night onward, Reeves made a quiet promise to himself. He would find out who Lieutenant Hayes really was and what had happened to him. He didn't know how long it would take, but he felt that the spirit salute was not just a greeting, it was a call for help. And so began the tomb guard's journey, not of guarding the dead, but of uncovering a truth long buried beneath time, silence, and forgotten memories. The next morning, Sergeant Michael Reeves woke up early, his mind still filled with the strange memory of that night. He couldn't forget the figure he saw at the tomb, the calm face of the soldier, and that silent salute that seemed to hold a hidden message. He tried to convince himself it was only his imagination, but deep inside he knew what he saw was real. He felt that the spirit wanted him to do something, maybe to find out who he really was. Over the next few days, Reeves couldn't focus properly on his regular duties. Every time he marched past the tomb, he felt that same cold wind brush across his neck, as if the spirit was still watching. Finally, he decided he could not ignore it any longer. On his day off, he went to the archives section of the military history department. It was a quiet room filled with dusty old files and photographs of soldiers who had served decades ago. Reeves began searching for the name Lieutenant Samuel Hayes. After several hours of turning through pages, he finally found a folder marked MIA 1944. Inside were reports, letters, and photographs from World War II. He opened it carefully and saw the name he was looking for, Lieutenant Samuel Hayes. The file said Hayes was part of an infantry unit that fought in France during one of the toughest battles of the war. His unit was attacked while crossing a small village, and several soldiers were killed or captured. Hayes had been declared missing in action, and his remains were never found. Reeves studied the black and white photo of Hayes. The face in the picture looked familiar. Calm eyes, strong features, and a posture of pride. Reeves's heart raced. This was the same face he saw that night at the tomb, the same man who had saluted him. It couldn't be a coincidence. That evening, Reeves visited a retired historian named Mr. Callahan, who had worked with the Army's Recovery Division for years. He showed him the file and told him about the strange experience he had at the tomb. The old man listened carefully and then said, "Sometimes the past calls out when it is not finished. If this soldier has appeared to you, maybe it means his story isn't complete." Mr. Callahan helped Reeves find more information about Hayes's last known location in France. The records mentioned a small village near Normandy where his unit had been attacked. The report said the village had been destroyed, and the area was left untouched after the war. Reeves wondered if Hayes's remains could still be there, buried under the ground, waiting to be discovered. For days, Reeves couldn't stop thinking about it. At night, he dreamed of the same fog-covered field, hearing the sound of footsteps, gunfire fading into silence, and the same figure saluting him again. It felt more like a memory than a dream. He took it as a sign that he needed to continue his search. When he told his commanding officer about his plan, he expected disbelief or even laughter. But to his surprise, the officer looked thoughtful and said, "Sergeant, the Defense POW MIA accounting agency sometimes allows guards or historians to assist in recovery missions. If you really want to find him, I can make a few calls." Reeves couldn't believe it. A real chance to go to France and search for the missing soldier? It felt like destiny. A few weeks later, Reeves received an email confirming he had been accepted to join a small research and recovery team traveling to Normandy to investigate unmarked wartime graves. The moment he read the message, a wave of emotion passed over him. He remembered that cold night and the silent salute, and he whispered softly, "I'll find you." When Reeves arrived in France, he was struck by how peaceful the countryside looked. Green fields stretched across the horizon, and small villages had been rebuilt long ago. But beneath that beauty, history still slept quietly. The team began searching near the coordinates mentioned in Hayes's report. They spoke with local villagers, some of whom still remembered hearing stories from their grandparents about American soldiers who fought bravely there. Days turned into weeks. Reeves helped dig through the soft soil, examining pieces of old equipment, helmets, buttons, and rusted dog tags. Every discovery made his heart beat faster. He often stayed late, walking the fields alone, listening to the wind. One evening, as the sun was setting, he stood near a group of old trees and felt that same sudden chill he had felt at the tomb. The air grew still and he knew he was close. The next morning, the team uncovered something unusual. Beneath the roots of a large oak tree, they found fragments of fabric from an American uniform and a small piece of metal. When they cleaned it, they saw the engraved letters, S. Hayes. Reeves stared at it, unable to speak. The team leader called for the archaeologists, and they carefully dug further. Soon they found remains, bones carefully preserved by the earth, along with a rusted dog tag that clearly bore the name Samuel Hayes. Reeves felt tears fill his eyes. After so many years, the missing soldier had finally been found. He stood quietly, saluted, and whispered, "You can rest now, Lieutenant." At that moment, the cold wind blew softly through the trees. Just like that night at Arlington, the recovery team carefully packed the remains, ready to bring them home. Reeves was honored to escort the casket back to the United States. During the long flight home, he looked out the window and felt peace in his heart. He knew the spirit who had appeared to him had not come to frighten him but to ask for help, to be brought home where he belonged. When they landed, the military arranged a full honor ceremony for Lieutenant Hayes. His family, who had only old photographs and fading letters, were finally able to say goodbye. Reeves stood among them, wearing his tomb guard uniform, silent but proud. As the ceremony ended and the last salute echoed through the air, Reeves felt that same cool breeze brush his face again. He looked toward the horizon and, for a brief moment, thought he saw a faint figure standing among the rows of white headstones. A soldier, standing tall, smiling and saluting. Reeves lowered his head and smiled softly. He didn't need any proof. He knew the truth. Lieutenant Hayes had finally gone home. That night, for the first time in many weeks, Reeves slept peacefully. The fog in his dreams was gone. The spirit had found rest, and so had he. But in his heart, he knew he would never forget that night at the tomb when the past reached out through time and silence, asking for one final act of honor and remembrance. Weeks passed after the ceremony of Lieutenant Samuel Hayes. The day had been filled with honor and emotion, and Sergeant Michael Reeves still remembered every single detail. The sound of the gun salute echoed in his mind, the folding of the flag, and the calm expression on the faces of the soldiers' family as they finally found peace. For Reeves, it had been more than just a mission. It was a calling that had changed his life forever. When he returned to Arlington, everything looked the same as before. The white stones stood in neat rows, the grass was neatly cut, and the silence of the place held the same deep respect as always. But inside, Reeves was not the same man anymore. He felt a quiet strength growing in him, a new understanding of what it meant to guard the unknown and the fallen. Each salute he gave now carried a deeper meaning, a silent promise that none of them would ever be forgotten. One night, while standing at his post again, Reeves thought about how it all began. The mist, the spirit, and that first salute. He realized that what had started as fear had turned into faith. He didn't need to see the spirit again to believe. He knew that somewhere beyond what eyes could see, Lieutenant Hayes was finally at peace. And yet there was something more, a calm presence, as if the spirit still watched over him, not as someone lost, but as a friend who had found his way home. Reeves continued his duties with a renewed sense of purpose. Every night when he walked across the plaza, he imagined all the unknown soldiers resting beneath the marble. He wondered how many more like Hayes were still waiting to be found. The thought didn't make him sad, it made him determined. He began studying more about the soldiers whose remains were missing, reading their stories, and helping historians collect information that could lead to other discoveries. Soon, Reeves became known among the guards and historians as the one who went beyond the post. He didn't just protect the tomb. He sought to protect their memories. During his free hours, he helped the Defense POW MIA office organize files and old photos. Sometimes he even spoke to families of missing soldiers, offering them comfort and hope that someday their loved ones might come home too. One evening, as he was walking back from his shift, an older man approached him near the gate. He was the father of one of the soldiers still listed as missing from the Vietnam War. The man shook Reeves's hand and said, "My son never came back, but knowing there are men like you who care, that means more than you can imagine." Reeves didn't know what to say. He simply nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. It reminded him that sometimes the smallest act of care could bring the greatest comfort. Months later, Reeves was invited to speak at a ceremony honoring those who helped recover missing soldiers. Standing at the podium, he looked at the crowd, families, veterans, and young cadets. He spoke slowly and simply in words straight from his heart. "A soldier never truly dies if someone remembers them," he said. "Sometimes the past reaches out to us, not to frighten us, but to remind us of our duty, to keep their stories alive." The audience remained silent for a moment, and then applause filled the hall. Reeves felt humbled. He hadn't done it for attention. He had done it because it was right. That night, after the ceremony, Reeves returned to the cemetery alone. The moon was bright and the air was cool. He walked to the tomb of the unknown soldier and stood there quietly. The marble shone under the light and the whole place seemed almost alive. He placed his hand on the cold stone and whispered, "Thank you for trusting me." He didn't expect an answer, but just then, a gentle breeze passed through, soft but clear. It was the same kind of wind he had felt that first night. It made him smile. Reeves took a step back, stood tall, and gave one final salute into the night. He didn't need to see a spirit this time. He could feel the presence of thousands of soldiers who had once served and sacrificed. Their courage lived in every breath of that sacred ground. In the months that followed, Reeves continued his work as a tomb guard, but now his heart carried peace instead of questions. He had seen something that few ever would, a moment where the past and present touched each other through duty and respect. He didn't talk much about what had happened, but those close to him noticed a calmness in his eyes and a steady strength in his voice. Sometimes, when new guards joined the duty, Reeves would share a simple story with them. He would say, "When you stand here, you're not just guarding a tomb. You're standing watch for every soldier who never came home. Remember that every salute you give might be seen by eyes you cannot see." The young guards would listen quietly, and though they didn't fully understand, they could feel the meaning behind his words. Years passed, and Reeves eventually retired from active duty. On his last day, he stood one final time before the tomb, just as he had so many years ago. The air was calm, and the flag above waved gently. He thought about how everything had started with a single moment. One salute shared between two soldiers from different times. It had changed his life forever. As he walked away from the tomb, he turned back one last time. For a brief second, he saw a faint glimmer near the marble, like a reflection or maybe something more. It looked almost like a man standing at attention, giving a proud salute. Reeves smiled softly. Whether it was real or only a memory, it didn't matter. He knew the truth. That night, as he left the cemetery, the stars above seemed brighter than ever. Reeves felt no fear, no sadness, only gratitude. He had served his duty, honored the fallen, and helped bring one forgotten soldier home. The bond between him and Lieutenant Hayes had gone beyond time, beyond words and beyond death. From that day on, whenever Reeves heard the sound of the wind passing through the trees or saw the flag waving gently in the distance, he felt that quiet presence again. It reminded him that duty, honor, and remembrance never end. They live forever in the hearts of those who choose to remember. And so the tomb guard's story became more than a mystery about a spirit. It became a story of faith, respect, and the unbroken promise that every soldier, known or unknown, deserves to be remembered, and that sometimes, even the silent ones find a way to speak.